Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is monitor. Let's take a look at some of the definitions or the ways that we use this verb. The first way you are likely to hear monitor used is to mean to observe and check the progress or quality of something over a period of time. Perhaps you've heard of air quality, right? The presence of air pollution in our environment. Sometimes the air quality is monitored, it's checked to make sure that it's safe for people to breathe in and breathe out. A second way the verb monitor gets used is to mean to maintain regular and close observation. This could be observation of someone or something. We'll see some examples of this later, but sometimes in connection to watching children. You might hear that the child should be monitored while they're playing in a particular area or with some particular type of toy that might seem a little dangerous. A third way monitor gets used is to mean to listen to and report on radio broadcasts or phone conversations. So you might hear this verb used in connection to war and spying and kind of that idea of trying to understand perhaps what an enemy or another nation is doing. You should know that monitor is a regular verb. To make the progressive form of this verb, all I need to do is add ing to form monitoring. The past tense and participle forms of this verb can be made by adding ed. Our base verb monitor ends in a voiced R sound. This means that our past tense ending is just going to make a D sound, and we're not adding an extra syllable as we say it. So it's just a duh, not an id. Okay? The past tense and participle forms should sound like this: monitored, monitored. Now, there aren't any phrasal verbs that we need to study, so instead, let's practice using our verb of the day in a couple different verb tenses. Today, we'll practice the imperative and the past progressive. We'll start with the imperative. You might be more familiar with this being called commands. So in English and many other languages, right, sometimes you don't ask someone to do something or suggest, you just tell them very directly, do this action. And that's what the imperative is about. Okay? So we don't ask questions in the imperative, we just tell people to do or not do a certain action. Okay? Now, there is something rather unique about the imperative. If you've watched more than just this particular video on my channel, you know that I talk a lot about our structure. And so most of the time we begin with a subject. This could be a person, a thing, right? Then we'll use our verb. But here in the imperative, we do not have a subject. Or I should say, we don't have a stated subject. The subject is always implied. It's either you singular or you plural, depending on to whom I am speaking or to whom I am writing. Okay? So what I can do is just begin my sentence with the verb, right? So I might tell somebody, monitor the weather radar. We may need to go to the basement. I live in the Midwest in the United States, and springtime is sort of notorious. It's well known that we can have some really bad and dangerous storms, like tornadoes. And so sometimes you need to be observing, you need to be paying attention to what's going on to the weather so that you can get to a safe location in case really severe weather develops, right? So here, again, I'm giving a command. Now, if you wanted to soften this just a little bit, because it seems a little rude to tell someone what to do, you could put please at the beginning of the sentence, or you could put it at the end, and either of those would be fine. Let's talk about making a negative imperative. Here we're telling someone not, right? Don't do something. So that's how we're going to start our sentence. You can start with do not or the contraction don't, and then the base verb. Here's another example. Don't monitor my texts or social media. Right? You can imagine a teenager saying this to his or her parents, right? Don't watch what I'm doing, right? Don't observe closely, right? They don't want that kind of attention. Now, let's talk about the past progressive. Some teachers and textbooks call the past continuous, and that's fine. There's no problem with that. Past progressive, past continuous, they mean the same thing. I like calling this past progressive because I use the names of the verb tenses to help my students remember how many parts we need to make the verb tense. So here, two P's. So we're going to need two parts. We're going to use a past form of be, and then we're going to use the ing form of the verb. Okay? And we're using this verb tense to talk about an action that is ongoing during some period of time in the past. It can be common to see the past progressive used with the simple past tense. So we might see past progressive describing an action that was in progress or that was continuing, and it gets interrupted by an action. And that interrupting action is usually in the simple past tense. So again, I mentioned two parts to our verb tense. So here I do need to pay attention to my subject. If my subject is I, he, she, or it, I'm going to use was and then the ing form of the verb. But if my subject is you, we, or they, I will use were, W-E-R-E, and then the ing form of the verb. Let's take a look at an example sentence. Many companies were monitoring their employees through computer software while they worked from home during the pandemic. Right? So this was true. There were many news reports. Maybe you had this experience where some type of tracking software was used to watch your keystrokes or kind of watch your eye movement to see, are you really sitting in front of your computer and working? Okay, so we can see we're monitoring, right? That's indicating an action that was ongoing. Now, let's talk about a past progressive in the negative. To do this, we'll have our subject. We've got to pay attention to what it is, and that subject is going to tell us whether we should use were or was. Then we insert not, and you might hear wasn't or weren't, and then we're going to see the ing form the verb again. My next example is quite sad and unfortunately very true. The grandmother wasn't monitoring her grandson when he fell into the pool. I think this was a recent article I read, a very sad situation where a small toddler, I can't remember if it was like a 2, 3, or 4-year-old, was not being observed. Someone wasn't paying attention, got outside, got into the water, and unfortunately drowned. Now, let's move and look at making a yes or no question in the past progressive. To do this, again, I start with was or were. Depends on what my subject is. Subject comes next. Then you're going to see the ing form of the verb. Here's my last example. Were banking regulators monitoring Silicon Valley Bank before its collapse? Okay. So this is a question many people were asking themselves in recent weeks. This has caused a lot of anxiety for people who had money invested in this bank, many people who are saving their money at other smaller local or regional institutions. They've also wondered kind of, is my money safe? Are our government regulators, those people in charge of checking and observing things, are they doing their job? Okay. Now, let's spend a moment looking at some words that are related to our verb monitor. And there's actually just one word we're going to discuss today. It's the noun form of this word. So you'll notice the noun monitor is spelled exactly the same way, and it has the exact same pronunciation as our verb. Like our verb, there are many definitions or ways to use the noun monitor. We're going to talk about 4 today. I tried to pick out ones that I thought were maybe more common for my students to encounter. So one way you might hear monitor used is to describe a type of instrument or device that is used for observing something, checking something, or kind of keeping some continuous record of the process or the quantity of something. Let's take a look at an example sentence. She's been wearing a heart monitor for a week. Okay? So sometimes if people have had certain experiences, right, something might seem a little bit off, right? This instrument can be worn, kind of connected, so that doctors will have a very thorough and complete record of one's heartbeats and one's heart activity for a period of time. A second way the noun monitor gets used is to refer to a person who observes some process or maybe an activity in order to make sure things are going accordingly. So maybe it's to do something accurately or correctly. An example of this could be he works as a playground monitor, right? So here someone is observing, probably watching the safety, making sure kids are being kind, they're not hurting each other or getting into dangerous situations. That's what we're describing here. A third way to use the noun monitor is to refer to a student who maybe gets selected or appointed to help or assist a teacher in a classroom. So, an example of this might be Mary will be the classroom monitor while I'm away. I remember teachers sometimes doing this when they needed to run to the bathroom, right? And they needed, they might put one or two students kind of in charge and ask everyone to read quietly. But in case there was an emergency, they needed a student or two they could trust to get help. A fourth way you might encounter the word monitor is to refer to a screen. This screen is generally going to display an image. And that image might be from a computer. Sometimes this idea of a monitor is used in connection to television production and being able to see what is being recorded from that process. So an example of this might be our company provides dual monitors to staff. And so I thought it would be helpful to have a picture to look at here, right? So I hope you can see we've got like two screens here with, goodness, I don't know, it looks very technical, maybe some code there written. This might be an example of dual monitors, two screens that we can attach to our computer in order to display more information. It might help you work a little bit more efficiently. That's many times why people have them. Thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope you have a great day.